everybody, and welcome to the Paws for Stitches podcast. My name is Candy, and this is episode 23 of my little podcast where I hang out with you guys for a little while and talk about all of the knitty adventures that I have going on currently. I want to take a moment to welcome any of you who may be new to the podcast. Thank you so much for checking out my podcast. We all know there are millions of them out there that are amazing to watch. So I really appreciate you taking some time to spend a little bit of your time with me. For those of you that are coming back as returning viewers, welcome, welcome again and again and again. Thank you so much for all of your support, and I'm so glad to be spending time with you guys a little bit this evening. It is Saturday, what is it, August 11th? Does that sound right? I don't know. It's the summer. Sometimes I forget the date. What are you going to do? But it is late Saturday afternoon in New Jersey. For those of you who are returning viewers, obviously, I am not sitting outside on the deck, on the porch in the Adirondacks. We are clearly not up at our cabin this weekend, and we're hanging out in New Jersey, but we're getting a ton of stuff done. So I'm looking forward to actually maybe next weekend heading back up there with Jamie. That's at least, fingers crossed, that's what we're hoping. So anyway, it has probably been, well, hang on, before I get into that, let me, especially for those of you who are new viewers to the podcast, I should take a moment and let you know where you can find anything and everything related to this Paws for Stitches podcast. Probably you can find me in one of two places. That would be either on Ravelry or on Instagram, both as Paws4, that's the number 4, Stitches podcast. And we also, in Ravelry, have an awesome Paws for Stitches podcast group where there are tons of amazing people. There's lots of stuff going on, especially right now, and we'll talk about some of that in this episode. So go ahead on over and join that Paws for Stitches podcast group so that you don't miss out on any of the fun. And along those lines, especially if you are a new viewer, if you enjoy spending some time with me today, then go ahead and click on the little red subscribe button so that you will get notifications whenever I have a new episode up. Speaking of that, it's been a while. It has been probably a little bit over a month, I think, since I saw you guys last, and I'm sorry for that. Although, let's face it, I've been averaging about a podcast a month lately. I don't ever know whether that's good or bad. There's pros and cons to everything, I suppose, but that seems to be about what the timing has been lately. So I think this time, though, was a little bit later than usual. I had hoped to film last weekend when we were up in the Adirondacks, but we actually were up for the weekend. Jamie went up even earlier in the week, and then I drove up because I was working. I drove up to meet up with Jamie and his mom and his sister Christine. So we had a really fun time last weekend with family. So I don't know, it's always hard when you have other people around to be like, oh, sorry guys, we can't do anything fun today because Candy has to podcast, that usually doesn't work out so well. So anyway, I decided to wait until I knew I would have some quiet time this weekend to spend with all of you. So that is that. So basically, aside from that last weekend, since I've seen you all, I believe I may have even filmed either on or right around July 4th last time around. I don't know. I pretty much have been working, cruising, and as of the last few days, shall I dare admit, Game of Thronsin. Yes, let me go back. Let's start with the first one. I have been working a lot. Those of you who are returning viewers may remember that I work in a school district here in New Jersey, but I am a 12-month employee because I supervise the language arts curriculum and program for our kindergarten through 4th grade classes. So I actually spend a lot of time during the month of July. Is one of my busiest months, believe it or not, even though people think that nothing's going on in schools over the summer. a lot of times there's actually a lot going on because we have to take advantage of those couple months to do things that are a little bit harder to do when school is in session with all of the staff and students around. So tons of curriculum work. I am still trying to keep up with that. I have a ton of, I feel like I have a month's worth of work to finish within the next week or two, but it'll all get done. I always have to remind myself this time of year when I'm in a panic that I'm always in a panic. July and August, that's what it is. And somehow, miraculously, it always gets done. So, lots of work. But somewhere in the midst of all of that, Jamie and I did have the chance to go on a cruise for our 20th anniversary. I think I was telling you all that I had that coming up when I recorded my last episode. So, yes, the cruise has come and gone, which is sad because it was an absolutely delightful 7 days. We went on a Royal Caribbean cruise to the Caribbean. We went to Nassau, Bahamas, St. Kitts, and St. Thomas. And, I could probably talk forever and ever and ever about all the fun things we did, but suffice it to say, it was a relaxing trip. But we also had a lot of fun, did a lot of different things. I think probably the highlight for Jamie and me would have been the catamaran trip that we took out to St. John's while we were in St. Thomas. St. John's is an absolutely lovely island. If I had to choose an island that maybe I would want to go back to and just sort of stay there and not do the whole cruise thing, but just concentrate our time in one place, that would be a place I would definitely look into. So there was that. So the Workin, the Cruisin, and the last few days, I finally gave in. I finally gave in and started watching Game of Thrones. You know what it is? It's like you just not. I was never like a follower necessarily. I didn't always feel like I had to do things just because other people were doing it. But I don't know what it was. There was a day not too long ago where I swear every time I turned around, people were talking about, I guess it must have been the most recent Game of Thrones episode, which clearly was a shocker and had people in awe and suspense and all of this. So I finally I said, you know what? I gotta give this thing a try. So now I'm kind of getting it. I am, I think, 6 episodes into the first season. Holy cow, though! I need a Game of Thrones cheat sheet because there's a lot. There is a lot to the show. There's a lot to the characters. There's a lot to all of the different settings and locations, and just it almost is sort of like you feel like you have to learn another language. I think watching this show. So I am but I am intrigued enough by the whole thing that I'm going to keep going with this, absolutely. I was talking to my friend Jenny and texting a couple of my friends after I think it was that very first episode where that adorable young boy, Bran, I believe. See, I'm getting there. I'm getting my names down a little bit. But when that scene happens at the end of that very first episode, I was like, oh my God. So I have a feeling now I understand why people have reactions like that to this show. So I am definitely going to keep going with that. So that's pretty much it. That has been the last month or so of my life. Take it for what you will. And also mix in a bunch of knitting, and we'll get to that, of course, as why not? This is, after all, a knitting podcast. It would be probably nice to spend a little time talking about that with you guys. But one of the things that I wanted to do before we even get into things is I wanted to talk about some giveaways that happened recently and also a new giveaway that I would like to announce for this podcast. So there are a few people. I'm just throwing out some names, mainly to Yarn Taxi Driver and also Sarah Shepherdess of the Dabbling Shepherdess podcast. You guys have some packages heading your way, so I just wanted to let you know that. I apologize. I definitely, with everything that's been going on and between the work and the travel, I've not been getting to the post office as quickly as I would have liked. So those packages will be on their way to you. So be on the lookout, hopefully sometime this week for that. The other thing I wanted to remind everybody is that I guess in the beginning of the last episode, which was, I talked a lot about this whole concept of friend dependence and how grateful I was to all of the new friends that I've made in this knitting and podcasting community. And as a result of that, I decided to gift a pretty, I'm still like, so hard, I don't want to part with you, Little Bean Loves. This is a one-of-a-kind skein from one of my favorite dyers, Kayleen, who is the dyer behind Little Bean Loves. And this is actually one of her one-of-a-kind colorways. I had mentioned that I bought it in anticipation of a New York Rangers beginning of the season cast on. But because my last podcast was around July 4th, I was feeling the red, white, and blue, and we were celebrating friend dependence. So what I had asked people to do was to leave a little note right here on YouTube talking about a significant knitting friend that they have in their lives. So that it was really touching to read all of the different stories about the relationships and friendships that you all have through knitting because of knitting. And I went ahead, I learned my lesson the last time, I hope you all don't mind, but this time I went ahead and did all of my, actually for this particular giveaway, believe it or not, I actually just put names into a hat and drew a name, but I do have a winner for this skein, and it is, let me just make sure I have this correct, that I'm not mixing things up. It was Knitasaurus Wrecks, who is Christy, I think your name is Christy. I hope I'm right about that. If not, I apologize completely. But the reason I know that is because this fine knitter actually has, with another friend, an amazing audio podcast called the Crafty Hive podcast that I have definitely enjoyed listening to. I have not listened to all of the episodes, but the ones that I've listened to, I've really, really enjoyed very much. So, Christy, I hope that you will be excited when you see this, or if somebody else tells you about this, that you will have this skein of Little Bean Loves coming at you. If I'm not mistaken, I'm going to be sending this to maybe North Carolina. Is that right? Hopefully. But because this was a YouTube giveaway, if you could go ahead and maybe send me a private message either through Ravelry or Instagram, so I can get your address and get this sent on its way. And hopefully you won't have to wait as long as my poor other friends had to wait from the last time around. So that's that. So congratulations. And again, happy friend dependence. So here's all this talk about friend dependence and meeting all of these amazing people through Ravelry and YouTube and the podcast. I hadn't actually looked, truthfully, and I will say that I do check fairly regularly to see if I've received any new subscribers to the podcast or whatnot, but I don't think I had looked in a little while until earlier today. And I knew I was inching closer to 400 subscribers, but as of this morning, earlier today when I looked, we actually have 401 subscribers to the Paws for Stitches podcast. So I'm really excited about that. It probably doesn't seem like a lot to a lot of people, but never in my wildest dreams did I absolutely think that 401 people would actually click a little red button to sit here and listen to me ramble on about knitting for a little while. So I thought that was something to celebrate, and I'm always looking for an excuse to give something else away. So we are going to do another giveaway for this podcast. And this time we're going to do another skein of yarn. And I liked the YouTube thing last time, so I think we'll do the same thing again. And this time I am just going to actually, what am I going to have you respond to? I think we're going to keep it summer related, since summer, I know I'm not supposed to say this because people really like summer and they cherish it and they want to hold on to it. So I think, of course, for me, in addition to watching podcasts and all this other stuff that I do, I've had a lot of fun experiences in the summer. So that's what I'm going to ask you guys to do. I am going to ask you to, in the little clickety bar, whatever you call the thing below on YouTube, go ahead and just leave a message down there and share what's the best thing so far that you've done this summer. So we're keeping it nice and simple. I don't have any major ideas for a prompt or anything for this, but just to celebrate 400 subscribers, I thought it was only fair to give away 400 yards of beautiful yarn. And it was funny because I don't know, maybe this is just my imagination, but I usually check out the yardage on a skein of yarn, especially if I'm, checking for a particular project that I need to know that information. So when I happened to take a peek at this skein and I noticed that there were exactly 400 yards in this skein, I thought, what a great way to celebrate 400 subscribers. I can't think of a better way than to give away 400 yards for 400 subscribers. So this skein of yarn represents each of the 400 of you crazy people that are nuts enough to spend a little time with me. And for that reason, also, I thought it was perfect that the colorway is, I don't know, sort of aptly named Circus. So this is, I have showed this before. I showed it when I received it as a gift a little while ago. This is from Jackie's Original Fibers. Jackie is a knitter who works at the Yarn Attic, which is my local yarn shop. And not that long ago, she started dyeing yarn. And this skein I had showed last time is so much fun. It is so much fun, Circus. As you can see, I think you can do a lot of different things with this. So I am definitely going to go ahead and celebrate the circus that is the Paws for Stitches podcast by giving this away. So don't forget, go ahead in the little bar below. All you need to do is leave me a little message to say hello and to tell me what is something exciting that you've been up to this summer. So that is that. All right. So no surprise, but we're already 15 minutes into this, so it is about time to get down to some knitting. Because one of the things, last time I waited until a little bit later in the podcast to talk about this, but today I want to jump right in and talk about the progress that I've been making on my Rhinebeck sweater. Because I have to tell you guys that I have been in a complete and utter, what I'm referring to as sort of my Rhinebeck sweater haze. Like that's all I want to do. Even though things are crazy at work, I'm getting through my work day because I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, if I just get through this and if I just get these things done, then I get to go home and work on my Rhinebeck sweater. That is how much I'm enjoying this. It's not as though I don't say that about the majority of projects that I'm working on, but every once in a while, I do think a project comes along that has, I don't know, it just has something different. It feels special. It feels different. It feels kind of like you just want to throw everything about yourself into it. And this is that project for me right now. So for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, I actually showed a little tiny bit of it, a little start. Maybe it was, I don't know, might have been at about somewhere between 3 and 5 inches. I can't remember at that time. But I think you'll be impressed in a moment to see that it actually has been growing, and I'm super excited about that. But what I am talking about is the Westering Home Sweater by Kate Davies. So I have a couple like background things I want to talk to you guys about this time about the sweater. So before I show you the progress that I've made, I don't know that I did a good enough job last time of telling you a little bit more about the pattern, but more specifically, not so much about the pattern, but about the book that it actually is a part of. So this is not a pattern, and I could be wrong, and if I am, I apologize, and good for you if you figure out that there's a way to do this. But I don't believe this is a pattern that you can buy individually. It is a pattern that is actually part of a book entitled Yokes by Kate Davies. So I'm going to go ahead, if I can find one, I'm going to insert a picture of the cover of the book here. I was able to purchase the book as a download through Ravelry, so it was quite simple. It wasn't like I don't have a hard copy version of the book. It's just an ebook, which I like because then I can print out things that I need as I need them. I don't necessarily have to have another book that's going to probably live on a shelf and me only take it down from time to time. So I really liked that. And I can't tell you, it was a little, when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do for my Rhinebeck sweater, one of the things that I was thinking about was that I wanted something a little bit unique. So I think, if I had to guess, that one of the reasons maybe not a ton of people have this posted as a project in Ravelry perhaps is because it is part of this big ebook. But let me tell you something. If you are the type of person that actually likes to know more of the history and the background behind the things that you knit, you have got to go and really consider purchasing this ebook because it is amazing. I actually grabbed Jamie's computer so that I could share a little bit more about the book. I didn't print out any of the pages or anything like that to show you, but there's just a couple things that I want to highlight for you. So again, like I said, I'm going to pop in maybe some pictures just to give you a better idea as I'm talking about all of this. But as crazy as it sounds, even the table of contents of this book was fascinating to me. So it takes you through all the different, I guess you would call them chapters of the actual book. The very first chapter that I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about is actually called Why Yokes. And it talks about the history of the garment and why it has had such an enduring appeal over such a long period of time. But there are really fascinating chapters in this book. There's a whole chapter about the Shetland tree and star, and which is a really popular Shetland motif, and it talks about the background behind that. Those of you that are big Elizabeth Zimmerman fans would probably find it interesting to know that there is a chapter that is an entire conversation with Meg Swanson, and Meg shares her thoughts on, obviously, when I do think yokes, oftentimes I do think Elizabeth Zimmerman, and Meg shares some of her recollections about Elizabeth and just the whole legacy that she has left with regards to so many things related to knitting, particularly the yoke sweater. So there's a whole chapter on symbols. What are some of the different things that the yoke symbolizes? So that's fascinating. So again, sometimes I think we're quick to say, oh, I'm not really sure I want to spend the money on that book. Oh my goodness, if you are having that thought about this, do it, because it is really, really interesting. So here it was what I wanted to share with you guys is just a little bit of the, I don't have a children's book to share with you this time. So we're going to do a little dramatic reading of the introductory chapter, which is called Why Yokes. But this will give you, I think, a little bit of a feel for the book and maybe a little nudge to want to go check it out. So here we go. Again, Why Yokes, a versatile garment with a fascinating history and an enduring appeal. The simple reason why this book exists is that I love yokes. When I started knitting again around a decade ago, yoke sweaters were top of the list of things that I longed to make, and soon I found that I couldn't stop making them. Yokes were also the first garments I created as a designer, and several years later, I still can't stop designing them. Why do I love yokes so? Yokes are, I love this, and I'm going to stop after this, but yokes are a kind of knitted jewelry. They adorn the shoulders and frame the face in ways that can range from delicate to dramatic. A carefully blended colorwork yoke might seem virtually kaleidoscopic. A textured yoke worked in neutral cables or lace can be a beautifully subtle way of decorating the upper torso. So again, it just gets into, there's a lot of really interesting information beyond the fact that there are 11 yoke patterns in here that are one more beautiful than the next. So as I already mentioned, I am tackling the Westering Home Sweater by Kate Davies. And I chose this because I actually thought it would be an interesting, it's something very different, very unique to anything that I have ever knitted before. And I think I posted on Instagram not that long ago, and I got a few thumbs up on this, people saying that they think it could be a word. You know how we have the slanket, we have, what else do we have? We have, now I've seen the term swancho for sweater and a poncho, tons of things like that. I do believe that what I am in the process of knitting, I could probably refer to it as a SWOAT. It is part sweater, part coat. Because this thing, the way it wraps around, you really, really probably could wear it as an outer garment. And I'm excited about that because, again, I chose this as my Rhinebeck sweater. Now, who the heck knows what's going to happen in terms of Rhinebeck, whether it will be freezing cold or whether it will be warm. One never knows in October. I think we can kind of expect anything. But what I liked about this sweater as a possibility, or SWOAT, as a possibility for Rhinebeck, is that it could be sort of my primary sweater if it's really cold, but if it's a bit on the warmer side, which it may very well be, then I could wear either, something lighter, just like a t-shirt underneath it, and almost use it as, I guess, my, almost more of a coat kind of a thing. So I think it's going to have some good possibility to it. So anyway, without further ado, I wanted you guys to see how things are progressing with this. The hardest thing about working on a big project like this is that sometimes I feel, and that's why oftentimes I don't get that upset that I don't podcast more frequently, because one of the things I don't want to do is feel like I'm just constantly showing you the same one or two things all the time. That seems, I would imagine you guys would get bored with me very quickly if that were the case. So, but I do think that I definitely made some significant progress on this, enough that, especially if those of you who are new, you haven't seen this at all, and those of you who are returning, I think you'll definitely see a difference. So I've been plugging my way through here, and this is what we have so far. I do believe, let's see, this is going to get harder and harder to show you guys, by the way, but I think before I was probably only about like here last time. So holy cow, look, see, we just take a moment to just seriously look at these cables. Look at these cables. They are absolutely gorgeous. And this color, oh, and by the way, I could be wrong. I don't know. I'm wrong oftentimes, but I'm going to make sure that I am telling you guys the right name this time, because the last time I knew the name of the yarn. Obviously, I was working with Malabrigo worsted, but it is Red Java. I do believe that last time I told you that it was called Red Lava. That is incorrect. So make sure that now I have the right name on the screen. It is Red Java with a J, not lava with an L. So here we go. I'm going to, again, kind of just take you guys on a little journey of beauty across this sweater here. I am in love with this thing. I am absolutely in love with it. One of the things that you'll notice that you can see is I'm not worrying about, like, what do you call it? When you connect, I don't even know. When you connect a new ball of yarn, and there's all these different ways to do it. Some of them that involve your spit that I have done before. There's a Russian join. I think you can do that. I'm not worrying too much about it because there's not going to be too many times. So I'm just leaving my ends as they are, and I'll go ahead and weave them in. I'm sure it'll be a pain in the neck, but I'm not going to worry too much about it. I think I told you all this last time, but I am alternating skeins, which I was definitely encouraged to do. Evidently, sometimes with Malabrigo, that is something you want to keep in mind, but I haven't noticed anything wonky going on at all. I'm really pleased with how the colors are blending together very nicely, and I seriously, I could not be happier with this sweater. I absolutely love it, and I'm really, really excited to work on this. I know I said it before, but I am not even kidding you. If I'm having a crummy day, I think about this sweater, and it kind of helps me get through the day because I'm excited, really, really excited to come home and work on it. So far, as I said, the cable pattern, it's really not that bad. It's very easy to read your knitting on this pattern, and really those, out of every 10 rows, you've got those 2 rows with your cable needle that you've got to concentrate a little bit harder. But aside from that, it's really not that complicated. But when you look at it, it looks super complicated. So who doesn't love a project like that? Who doesn't love a project? It almost feels like you have a secret, because you know that when this thing is done and you wear it, people are going to be like, you knit that? You made that? But the secret that you have in your head is kind of like, yeah, as long as I know how to knit and purl, it's really not that bad. So anyway, I am all about the Kate Davies right now. What I will actually try and do is put in a couple more pictures right now, because again, as I mentioned earlier, there are 11 different patterns in this ebook. 2 of the other ones that I have my eye on, although quite frankly, let's face it, in this lifetime of mine, I would love to make all 11 of the patterns that are in this book, but one of them is called the Cockatoo Bray, and the other one is called Epistrophe. So I'm going to go ahead and put in those 2 pictures there, again, just to give you another idea of just kind of the intrigue of the patterns that are a part of this particular book collection. So Kate Davies hit it out of the park with this one. It is absolutely amazing. I think what I would love to do, honestly, I want to knit all of the sweaters in this book, and then I want to travel to Scotland. That's pretty much what I want to do, and just wear all my sweaters and twirl around on a mountain somewhere, because it just is really, really, really a beautiful, beautiful book. So please go ahead and check that out. All right, enough about the really warm, toasty Rhinebeck sweater. Last time I started out summer tops, and I went into Rhinebeck sweater. This time I started out Rhinebeck sweater, and I'm segueing into summer tops, because there is a little bit of an update to give you guys on the summer tops cowl, which is, those of you who are returning viewers may remember that this is a knit along that is being hosted by a few of the members of what we created as the Slow Ass Knitters Group. Slow Beep Knitters Group, for those of you who may be slightly offended by the name. And again, I know I've said it before, but it's not meant to be anything offensive. We are just really slow ass knitters. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. It just kind of happened. So that is still going strong for a few more days. I believe you have, if it is in fact August 11th, although maybe it might be August 12th by the time this podcast episode uploads, you probably will have roughly 3 more days in which to get your final object into that final objects thread in the summer top knit along. In the summer top knit along thread that is part of the Slow Ass Knitters group in Ravelry. So go ahead and definitely do that. What I wanted to do, because I haven't had the chance to do it yet, is I wanted the chance to show you what my prize is going to be. In case you don't remember, there are several of us that are hosting this cowl, which is good news for you guys, because anybody who has anything in that finished objects thread is actually going to have multiple chances to win a prize. Because I am giving away a prize, so is Lucky Jenny of the Lucky Jenny Knits podcast, Lynn of the Sunshine and Bubblegum podcast, Lacey of the Knitted Cupcake podcast, and Amy of the Amy's Knotted Knits podcast. All 5 of us, right? That's 5, yes, are giving away prizes for this particular knit along. So definitely make sure that you don't forget to get your finished object in there by August 15th, which is only a few days away. Because here's what you might be able to win from me. So just to warn you, I'm going to mention this name a lot between now and the end of the podcast. but I have had the opportunity to start getting to know a little bit better an absolutely delightful, delightful person by the name of Cheryl, who is the genius behind Hypnotic Yarn. And Cheryl is also Knitsy Pearlsy on, I believe, Instagram and Ravelry. So you're definitely going to want to go and check out her yarn because it is amazing. But for starters, just to show you the awesomeness that is Cheryl, I wanted to show you this amazing little giveaway package that she had sent to me when I had purchased a skein of yarn from her a little while ago. She tucked in, total surprise to me, tucked in a little giveaway prize for you guys. And as soon as I saw it, I thought, bam, this has to hands down be the prize for the Summer Top Knit Along. So here's what we have here. We have actually, this is her 80/20 Superwash Merino Nylon base. It is the Treat Your Feet base. Here we go. Look at this gorgeous hypnotic yarn. I know there's going to be a little bit of a glare, so I'm going to put it on the side like that, and I'm going to try to minimize the crinkling if I can. But Cheryl packaged this so beautifully that I do not want to take anything out. What she has in there obviously is a gorgeous skein of fingering weight sock yarn. Obviously you can see you have your coordinating little mini for your heels and toes, but that doesn't mean that's what you have to use it for, because this yarn is so pretty. It also would be a beautiful one skein shawl, or I don't know, you could actually combine this. This would actually be something really pretty to combine with some other things to work toward a fade. But the other thing too, as you can see, is she also makes amazing project bags. And tell me she didn't pick that one out for a reason for me. Look at all the adorable barking dogs. Colorful barking dog bag. How amazing is that? So that is going to be my prize for the Summer Top Knit Along, is going to be this awesome little giveaway package from Hypnotic Yarn from Cheryl. So thank you so much, Cheryl, for contributing that. Somebody is going to be super lucky to receive this. But wait, sounds like an infomercial. But wait, that's not all, because I showed this on my last podcast, so it shouldn't be a surprise. But I am also going to throw in a set of the specially made Summer Top Progress Keepers and Stitch Markers that were made by the fabulous Melissa of Knitty by Nature. I wanted to point out, I can't help but point out, can you see that the little bit of turquoise in the stitch markers goes so beautifully with the barking dog bag. So not that we knew this was all going to match, but I am probably going to very gently open up the big package and put the stitch markers in there so that I can send that off to one very super duper lucky winner. So please don't forget, go ahead and make sure you get your finished objects into that thread by April 15th. I know we said we were fickle. I know we bent on our original deadline, but I would say 99.9% certain that August 15th, boom, that is going to be the hard and fast stop date on this, so do not miss out. All right, now, just because August 15th is rolling around does not mean that you have to stop making summer tops, because as we discussed in the last episode, I am also, yes, even though I am knitting a gigantic warm cozy SWOAT for Rhinebeck, I have not forgotten about summer. I am still all about the summer tops. So I actually wanted to show you guys something else that I did start. I showed you, I believe, the pattern the last time and the yarn that I was going to be using, but I had not actually started the project. This is what I have started working on is the Vertex by, I believe it's Julie Weissenberger. I will confirm that and put it at the bottom for you. But this is actually an interesting summer. I would classify it as a summer top, but it's more of a summer, like, it would be something, it's not really a top, clearly, when you see it. you're not going to be wearing this all by itself. You're going to need something under it. So it's kind of something you throw on over like a tank top or a t-shirt or something like that. Really, really cool pattern. Now, interestingly enough, there is a really strong possibility I may be ripping this out, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But out of the corner of my eye, though, I'm just noticing that what I did want to point out is that I am so excited. I'm having a little like project bag envy lately. And because I do have a lot of fun projects going, I feel like lately it's been okay to go ahead and splurge on a few new project bags. Last time I showed you guys my new giant sweater size fat squirrel bag that I have my Westering Home sweater living in right now. The other project bag that I bought, I think, probably right after I talked to you guys last, is this one. And I absolutely love it. This is my first, where is it? Oh, there we go. DYS, baby. This is my first Diary of a Yarn Snob bag. Julie, I love this bag. If you saw it, maybe you saw that I posted on Instagram. This bag came with us on our cruise, and I bought it specifically for that reason, and I'm laughing at myself because I'm thinking about I want to say 8 pounds that I gained on the cruise. My plan did not work so well. But what I was thinking of is that if I had a bag with like healthy vegetables on it that was holding my knitting while we were cruising, that it would be like a reminder, that I can still eat healthy while I'm on this cruise. Yeah, well, we'll discuss that at another time. But I still, regardless of the fact, look at the coordinating fabric on the inside of there. You have some of the veggie fabric, but also look at the fun. She actually kind of flip-flopped sort of what's on the front of the bag and flip-flopped it on the inside of the bag. Julie, you do an absolutely beautiful job. There's also a little pocket. I'm going to try and show you that too. There's sort of a little flat pocket on the inside of there too, which is really nice for keeping, like, I actually have a little scissor and a couple other little stitch markers and things in there. So that's actually really helpful too. And I also just noticed that evidently I still have my sunglasses here from the cruise. Whoop. We don't need those because I have not been really sitting out in the sun or doing anything like that since we've returned from our trip. So whatever, that's what the project bags are for, right? So anyway, I had told you guys that I was going to be working with another linen yarn. This is actually the same linen yarn that I used for my my last summer top that I showed you guys, the completed one last time. This is the Euroflax Sport Weight linen, but last time I worked with the buttercream color. This time this is, I believe, ginger. Really, really pretty. Let me just confirm that for you guys because, sometimes I make things up and I tell you the wrong names of things. Yep. Ginger. I am not lying this time. Okay. So anyway, let me show you what I started on this good old Vertex. As you can see, I didn't get super far. You can kind of see how I'm starting to work up what'll be sort of the inner fronts, I guess, of the panels that you start to work. So that's what I have. But here's the thing. I'm going to try and show this to you guys. I really need to go back and almost treat this. I did swatch for this, but I almost want to treat this as a gauge swatch again and do some measuring because I'm not 100% sure. I don't mind the fabric in the plain stockinette part, and I get it. Like, linen is a little bit wonky. Like, your stitches, yeah, of course, it could just be me, but I find that my stitches aren't always as consistent as they are with other yarn. But I think what's troubling me is this. Like, if you really look close up, I just feel like it almost looks messy. Like, some stitches look bigger than others. I'm not pleased with this. It's not my proudest work. Let me just leave it at that. So one of the things I'm wondering is that if perhaps maybe I need to actually relook at gauge and go to a smaller needle size, maybe to tighten this up if I think maybe that would help. I don't know. I don't know if it's just a case of the linens, so to speak, or if it's a case of me and having to kind of double check my gauge. But I'm really, as you can see, even though I got this done on the cruise, I'm not like super far along. It wouldn't devastate me terribly to have to go back and rip this out. As I look at this, I laugh. First of all, I love these little stitch markers that I got. I don't remember. I got these at a yarn shop here in New Jersey, but I think they were Lantern Moon, if I'm not mistaken. They're so pretty. I would love to be able to actually figure out how to make little crocheted stitch markers like that because they're adorable. I know some really amazing crocheters out there, so you guys got to get on that. It's really cute. So anyway, I don't know what's going to happen with the old Vertex. So we might be ripping this sucker out. But anyway, it was fun working on it. The funniest thing, when I pulled this out, I immediately had some like flashback memories of the cruise because I thought I was going to knit like a champ on that cruise ship. Can I tell you, when you're knitting in a solarium, like a glass encased pool on a cruise ship, evidently you attract a lot of attention and everybody suddenly wants to talk to you about your knitting. I told Jamie did come and hang out with me a few times. It was actually funny. When I was with Jamie, I got more knitting done. When I was by myself and Jamie was doing God only knows what else on the ship, I hardly got any knitting done because I ended up in these lengthy conversations with people about God only knows what, usually starting with knitting. It's so funny because Jamie always tells the story. He, as a wood shop teacher, he'll still refer to himself as that. When you tell people that you're a wood shop teacher, 99% of the time, the person you're having the conversation with will have to tell you about the project they remember making in like middle school or high school wood shop. A lot of times it's a corner shelf. I'm just saying. But I'm starting to notice that similar things happen as a knitter. When you're knitting in public and people see you knit, and if they're comfortable engaging in conversation with you, I find that a lot of people like to start telling you about either how they used to knit, but they don't anymore, how they'd love to learn how to knit, but that they don't think they can, about how their mother or grandmother or best friend or somebody in their life knits all the time. Or my favorite one is when they engage in conversation with you and start to ask you about, well, what are you crocheting? So, but anyway, I actually, on maybe 3 separate occasions, just because I was sitting there knitting, I actually got the chance to talk to some really, really cool people. And so again, I know that a lot of people, I like it when people on their podcast, whether it be video or audio, do a little segment, and I think sometimes they'll call it like knitting in public or something like that, and they tell stories about conversations that get sparked just because they're sitting there knitting and somebody notices and they end up starting to engage in conversation. So I kind of felt like when we were cruising, I kind of felt like I was living one of those knitting in public segments. So I just thought I would throw that out there. But again, fun project. I think it's going to work out fine. I just have to take a little bit more time maybe to think about my gauge, make sure that, decide whether I want to continue with this and see how the fabric starts to look, or whether I just want to reevaluate and start from scratch. But regardless, whatever the case, this project is going to stay in my amazing Diary of a Yarn Snob bag. So thank you, Julie, for that. I love it. All right. Moving right along. I am going to move from the world of summer tops into kind of like a Sockapalooza segment here. I don't even know if it's going to be much of a segment, but I definitely have some things to talk about with regards to socks because I have been working on, I have a hoe, I have a half object I'm going to show you guys in a moment, but I also have something that I don't even know, like what do you call like 3/4 of the way done project? I have no idea, but I definitely have made some significant progress on socks since you guys saw me last. So last time, and this is where we'll start. Last time I had talked about, I had not a ton, but a portion of what I guess you would call the tube of the Afterthought Everything sock in the works. So I worked like gangbusters on that project, and I have some Afterthought Everything sock ruminations that I would like to share for a few minutes. So here's what's going on. Okay, what was once a tube is now magically almost 2 socks. So we're getting somewhere. We are definitely getting somewhere, which means first and foremost that this girl right here got over her intense fear of cutting that knitting. So I'm excited about that. It really is not that terrible to go ahead and cut your knitting. So that definitely is something that I am over, which is good. So here are some thoughts. I'm actually going to make sure I take my notes out for this because I actually bulleted a list of things I wanted to share about sort of the pros and cons of this whole Afterthought Everything concept. So because I tend to think I'm a positive person, I want to start with the positives. One of the things I liked best about this project is that I think having an Afterthought Everything sock on the needles is a great idea for people, especially that do a lot of traveling and want a project that's just easy to grab on the go, because really for the bulk of the project, you are just knitting, making a giant tube. So it really, as long as you can have it started, that's one of the beauties of this particular project. So I definitely like that. Another thing, if you recall, and I'll show you up close, you can kind of see there where the patterning is, but then obviously I only did the patterning on, I'll show you here, on the front of the sock. This is Mina of the Knitting Expat podcast. This is Mina's driftwood sock pattern. And one of the things I said last time that I really like about Mina's patterns, and I never did this before, I love how she does the patterning on the front of the sock, but then the back of the sock is just plain old vanilla sock. That was really interesting. So again, that worked really well in some ways for this Afterthought Everything project. But what I wanted to point out though is when it got to the point that, as you can see, this is where I cut. Right now my stitches are living on some waste yarn. So I still have some work to do on this because I think on one sock I actually am not sure. I might have missed a couple stitches that I was supposed to catch when I was putting them on the waste yarn. So I have to check that out. I also have this nonsense going on. So obviously I dropped quite a few stitches there and I got to figure out what's going on with that. So I have to go back probably a few rows, but it shouldn't be too terrible. But one of the things that I wanted to caution you guys on is that if you are doing this Afterthought Everything deal and you need to cut your knitting, lesson that I learned the hard way is that you probably want to make sure if you are using any kind of a pattern, even if it is just on one side of the sock, that the row on which you cut, try and make sure it's a knit row, because that is going to make your life a little bit easier when you're going to kind of grab and pick up all of those stitches. I think that's actually what happened to me, because I probably should have thought about that. I did not think about that when I actually went ahead and decided where I was going to cut. I might have been able to shift it a little bit so that, perhaps one of the socks might end up being a tiny bit longer than the other, but I'm not even really going to care that much about that. They are really cool. All right. So I want to stress that I actually think this is a fascinating concept. And if you want to learn a lot in one project, this is definitely something interesting to do, because let's now really quick for a minute talk about the 2 cuffs, okay? One of the things I realized is that with an Afterthought Everything sock, Obviously, if you're doing that tube, you are involved in a cast on and a bind off cuff all at the same, like in a sense that you have one cuff that is cast on and one cuff that is bound off. I don't think I said that clearly the first time. Regardless of that, because you're talking cuffs, you want to make sure that you've got some stretch going on there, right? My absolute favorite thing to do, because I am a cuff down sock knitter primarily, is I really do love Jenny's stretchy cast on. It took me a while to get, I'll admit that, and I can't tell you how many times I have watched the video with the little sea lions sitting in a row. Those of you who have seen the video know what I'm talking about. But I always have liked how this looks. Even if you look at it like that, like it's just got a beautiful, beautiful look and finish and polish to it. On the other end of my sock, however, when I had to do a stretchy bind off, I did the Jenny stretchy bind off, and I feel like it looks kind of wonky. Like even just look at the difference between that and that. So, not a fan of this. Not a fan of this at all. But obviously, if you're going to do an Afterthought everything sock, one of your cuffs is going to involve a bind off. One of the things I already thought of is that there are definitely other bind offs that I could look into, perhaps that wouldn't look as sort of messy as this. The other thing I thought of is that I could just get over myself, because I think once I start wearing these socks, they'll be perfectly fine. And it's not going to matter all that much what they look like. So I did learn that lesson from this. The other thing I wanted to draw your attention to is the heels. By the way, I haven't said much about the yarn because I talked about it last time, but this is the Cascade Heritage Prints, obviously their Christmas yarn. I decided it would be fun to do black heels because I was thinking to myself, if I want Christmas socks, it would be fun to have a reminder to not be naughty or you're going to get coal in your stocking. So that is why I went ahead and popped that black heel, and I'm going to do the same thing for the toes as well. I thought that would be fun. So I followed the pattern pretty much exclusively the first time around. And one of the things I noticed, and I wished I would have watched a couple of videos before I did this, I noticed that my heel was a little bit, almost seemed a little bit short for me. I almost felt like I needed the heel to be bigger. So maybe short's not the right word. The heel was a little bit small for me, and I wished it had been bigger. So then I watched a YouTube video, and somebody suggested going ahead and knitting before you go ahead and start your decrease rows for the Afterthought heel, to go ahead and just do 4 rounds of plain knitting and kind of build the heel up before you start bringing it in and decreasing. That worked much, much better for me. So it's kind of funny, like if you were to hold these 2 socks up close together, you'll see that they're a little bit different. I don't particularly care because, again, anytime I learn something, that's a win-win for me. So that's really what I have to stress more than anything about this whole experiment, is that you learn about binding off, stretchy bind off. You learn about a stretchy cast on. You learn about heel construction. You learn about, it's particularly the whole Afterthought heel construction. Obviously, now I'm getting to the point where I have to figure out, whether I need to work on this a little bit more to get, finish up with my toe. I have a feeling I'm going to need to almost rip back a little bit before I go forward, just to make sure everything is copacetic. So, so that's it. But yeah, the Afterthought Everything experience is on, and it is real, and I'm excited because obviously for the first time in years, I am going to have Christmas socks before Christmas. So that is amazing. So again, I just wanted to share with you guys the progress that I had made on that. So that is one sock related thing. The other, what's interesting then is if you think about it, we go from the giant long tube of the Afterthought Everything sock to the other sock that I wanted to show you guys, which is my very first shorty sock. So as I had said before, I do have a hoe, and there she is. Okay, this I hope you don't think I'm disgusting, but I put back on this top again because the other day when I went to get my nails done, I was wearing this and I thought it was hilarious how perfectly the yarn matched my top. This is kind of almost like a tunic dress / top kind of thing. But really, you need to check that out. I am really, really excited about this sock. I'm so excited about this sock. And this is where, as I mentioned before, I'm going to name drop this lovely lady again. This, again, is another hypnotic yarn. This is Cheryl's Wanderlust colorway. And I absolutely loved working with this. I actually have, and I can show you very quickly, I already have a decent amount of progress made on the next shorty sock. I also have dirty stitch marker. Sorry. I probably should have given some sort of warning before I showed that, but those are the most hilarious set of stitch markers I ever purchased. And they were, what was Slap Your Llama was the name of the Etsy shop. Go check that out because if she still has those, they were really, really funny. But anyway, again, as you can see, I definitely now am a fan of the whole Afterthought heel thing because I already have my waist yarn in for my Afterthought heel, so I'll go ahead and cut that. It was interesting because I knew I wanted to do shorty socks. This is my first pair of shorty socks I've ever done. Oh my God, how do you not love them? They go super fast. But one of the things that I wanted to point out is that a lot of people, it seems, and I actually checked out the Rose City Rollers pattern. For me personally, I'm not crazy about sort of that rolled cuff look. So I was looking for another, just some guidance with another pattern in terms of, how many rows would be appropriate for the cuff and how many rows you would want to knit before you actually start to get set up for your heel. And wouldn't you know it, Cheryl, Knitsy Pearlsy of Hypnotic Yarn, actually has a couple free shorty sock patterns on Ravelry. So if you haven't found them, go run and check them out. The one that I'm using for what I would consider more of a plain sort of vanilla shorty sock, she calls it her the espresso shot shorty sock pattern. I loved it. Cheryl, you did a nice job. It was super clear, super easy to follow. I don't even think I would need to look at the pattern again. I think you nailed it, and I really like sort of the proportion and the formula you've got going on here for the shorty sock. So kudos to you. Thank you for that. So that is what it is in terms of my sock progress. The other thing, though, that I wanted to mention, speaking of Cheryl and Hypnotic Yarns, is that I definitely am, I guess I am in the middle of a little hypnotic yarn fetish lately, because I also, before the cruise, bought this beauty. I don't have it in the skein anymore. It's all caked up. Jamie did that for me because I didn't know, again, I had no idea how much time I was going to be spending knitting on the cruise. Like, I probably way over prepared. But this, I had to get this because the name, let me find it so I can show you so that you know I'm not making this up. I just got a kick out of this when I saw this on her Instagram, and I saw that she had a colorway called Sweet as Candy. Not that I'm saying I'm always sweet, but my name, if your name is in the colorway, I think you have to buy the yarn. It's sort of a rule, okay? So now I am trying to figure out what I want to do with this. I don't know if I'm going to maybe do another Afterthought Everything experiment with this one and kind of tweak things that I learned from last time, or if I want another pair of shorty socks. I don't know, but I'm pretty certain that this is probably the next pair of socks I am going to cast on. I'm excited about that. And then last but not least, I am anxiously awaiting the delivery of another skein of yarn that I pre-ordered from Cheryl. If you follow her on Instagram, you will see that she came out with some fall colorways, one of which was called Leaf Peeping, and oh my God, You guys know me and the Adirondacks and how much I love the fall and the leaves and everything. So yeah, I had to have it. I went ahead and pre-ordered that. I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet. I even reached out to Cheryl and I told her that I have dreams going on about like needing this colorway in worsted weight because I think it would make a phenomenal worsted boxy, but I can't even think about that right now because I've got to concentrate on my Rhinebeck sweater. So, but the socks are going, they're coming along, which is exciting. All right, so I'm going to start to wind down a little bit. I don't have any more knitting to show you, but I do have a couple more things to tell you guys about. If you recall from the last episode, you had seen a little trailer, a little video with two absolutely adorable dogs that discovered that they were long-lost friends and ended up being pen pals, or maybe paw pals, we can call them. And I talked a little bit about the Pen Pal Cal that I am co-hosting with Jenny of the Lucky Jenny Knits podcast. Couple things about that I did not get to say last time that I wanted to make sure to remember this time around. So when Jenny and I started talking about this, I had told her the story about two friends that I have made in this crazy knitting world. One of whom is Sarah Pomegranate. Sarah is the host of the Yarns at Yinhu podcast. And Sarah and I have gotten to know each other over the last, I would say, year and a half or so. And one of the stories that Sarah told me that I've always loved is the story of how she became friendly with Fernanda, who Fernanda's Instagram name is Made by Fee, F-E. And the two of them actually met one another by becoming pen pals. And they communicated, they corresponded back and forth for quite some time. And then at one point in time, I don't know who it was that, made the first move, so to speak, but they actually said to one another, wouldn't it be really cool if we actually got to meet in real life? And that is actually how Sarah's Farm and Fiber getaway kind of got started, because the year before she did it formally and invited more people, she and Fernanda actually met up at the Farm and Fiber tour in Washington County, New York, and that was where they met each other in real life for the first time. That story has always stuck with me because, again, as I sort of started out the episode talking about sort of the whole friend-dependence thing, I continue to be blown away by this wonderful opportunity we have to make new friends and meet new people through this whole crazy knitting world out there. So, sort of as a salute to the friendship that Sarah and Fernanda started, that was kind of what got me to talking with Jenny about this whole concept of the Pen Pal Cal, because I just think it's really interesting that it could be feasible to actually make a real and true friend, somebody that someday, wouldn't it be awesome if you actually got to meet up in real life? So anyway, hence the Pen Pal Cal was sort of born, and I'm not going to get into all the details about that because unfortunately, if you're not already signed up with the Pen Pal Cal, it is too late to do that now. We actually already did partner everybody up, and what I'm excited about is to find out and to know a little bit more about how some of these partnerships are evolving. What I wanted to do is to tell you guys that even though Jenny and I, we obviously, since we're hosting this Cal, we can't win any prizes or anything like that, but what we did want to win was a new friend for each of us. So we had agreed that we would be able to get partnered up with somebody and that we would still be able to participate in the Cal. The only thing is that we would not actually win any of the prizes. So anyway, I am ecstatic because my pen pal is an absolutely lovely, lovely person by the name of Anna Kristen. Anna Kristen is from Iceland. So in a million years, did I ever think I would get the awesome opportunity to meet somebody or know somebody from Iceland? No, but now I do. So Anna Kristen and I have been exchanging some Ravelry messages. We've been exchanging some letters, and we're really, really excited to get to know one another. But as those of you know, those of you that are a part of, which by the way, I should probably stop here and say that if you do not have a partner for the Pen Pal Cal, I don't want you to feel like you have to watch the rest of this. This is why I saved it until the end, because what I have now to share is just a little bit of information about the first little Cal or challenge that we have going on for the people that are a part of the Pen Pal Cal. So what I should probably do is say a mwah, thank you, and thank you for joining me to those of you who might want to part ways with me for now. But if you are one of those Pen Pal Cal people, stick around because I want to tell you all about the first challenge. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So Jenny, if you watched Lucky Jenny Knits last podcast, she talked about this a little bit already. And I am going to, for this first challenge, or by the way, don't forget, we are actually referring to these as, instead of competitions, we're referring to them as Cal petitions. I am going to host the chatter and the finished objects threads for this first one in my Ravelry group. So just to make sure there's no confusion about that, I will definitely open up a thread for that shortly, I would say within the next few days after this podcast uploads. But anyway, the first Cal petition is going to be all about the socks. It is, as I said before, it's Sockapalooza, people. So basically, that's all you need to do. You need to just keep knitting all the socks. So this will officially start, the thread will officially open on August 15th, which is only a few days from now. And as Jenny and I mentioned, we are going to try and keep these Cal petitions kind of long so that you don't feel rushed, so that you don't feel stressed, so you have plenty of time to kind of communicate with your partner and talk about, how whatever level you want to commit to this, by the way, is all up to you. We picked socks to start with because we thought, hey, there's a really good chance that people are going to be making socks, so why not win some points or earn some points for that? But the points, there are multiple ways in which you can earn points or bonus points for that matter. So that's what I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about right now. And this will be all up in the thread for you in case you don't catch this and you want to make sure you know all the details. So here's how this is going to work. Basically, you and your partner are going to knit socks. That's the bottom line. You're going to be knitting socks from August 15th until the end of September. Obviously, you're probably going to knit socks longer than that too, but we'll close the thread right around the end of September. And in a nutshell, for each sock that you or your partner finishes, you will earn 1 point. So 1 point per sock. That's like sort of the base point earnings, if you will. However, there are multiple ways in which you and your partner can earn bonus points. And by the way, in keeping track of these points, all that means is that at the very, very, very end of the Pen Pal Cal, Jenny and I are going to have some awesome prizes. The more points that you and your partner earn, the more chances, I guess is the best way to put it, that you will have towards earning some of those prizes. So that's why, and again, you will still be eligible for prizes no matter how hard or no matter how much you want to get into the whole points thing. So that's what we really had wanted to stress, is that it doesn't matter. You guys can do as little with this or as much of this as you want to. So here is some information about the sock points. So like I said, 1 point per sock. If you make a patterned sock, it's an extra bonus point for that, okay? If you try a new technique, it's an extra bonus point for that. So even like this whole Afterthought everything sock that I just did, that would qualify for me as a new technique because I've never tried that before. So new technique could mean a new heel, a new toe, a new stretchy bind off, a new stretchy cast on, whatever the case may be. You'll just have to articulate that when you post your finished object in the finished objects thread so that Jenny and I know how many points to give you for that. By the way, obviously, this is all going to be based on honor system, people, so we don't have any problems with that. Hopefully, you won't either. By the way, if you heard pouring going on a minute ago, that was just Jamie coming up, referring to himself as bar service and refilling my drink. So thank you, Jamie, for that. So anyway, new technique, 1 bonus point. Contrasting heels and toes also earn a bonus point. And then there are 2 more ways that you can earn bonus points, and these are big time, you guys. One way is if you attempt any kind of socks that have any kind of color work going on, that's 2 bonus points per sock. And then here's the biggie, because again, you know this Cal is all about fostering friendships and doing nice things for other people and getting to know other people. If you knit socks for your pen pal, so in other words, and I don't know how you're going to prove this. Maybe you're going to have to show the socks, but then suddenly your pen pal that's God only knows where else away from you is going to have those socks on her feet. I suppose that could be proof. So that actually can earn you 5 bonus points. All right. So we will have all of this spelled out for you guys in the thread in my Ravelry group, the Paws for Stitches podcast Ravelry group. So you could check that out when you are ready. But again, August 15th is the start. So the thread won't, let's face it. Am I going to maybe open the thread a day or 2 before that? Because hopefully it'll be more fresh in my mind. Possibly. But if not, August 15th is when that will officially start up and run for about a month and a half. So have fun with it. And again, I know that one of the concerns that some people had about signing up for this Cal was that they didn't want to let somebody else down. They didn't want it to be competitive. They wanted it to be fun. That's exactly what we want it to be. We want it to be fun. So you and your partner, hopefully you and your pen pal, will be able to have conversations with one another about like how crazy you want to get. It's totally up to you. But just remember that it doesn't matter how many points you have. You'll still be eligible for prizes at the end. So that's that. And that kind of, you guys, is wrapping up, I think, this episode for now. I mean, if I'm looking, I was trying to think, like, I have a lot coming up that I'm looking forward to, and I'm not going to get into a tremendous amount of detail, but over the next couple months, just to kind of throw it out there, these are a couple things you're probably going to hear me talking a lot about. One of them is the Knit for Fun retreat that I am going to toward the beginning of November, and that is in Edmonton, up in Canada. Rumor has it, I'm pretty certain the grocery girls are going to be there. So how psyched am I about that, to get the opportunity to maybe meet Jody and Tracy. Although I know they're going to be at Rhinebeck too, so hopefully I'll be able to say hey to them there as well. But what I'm most excited about is the fact that I'm going to get the opportunity to take classes with Ann Budd, Susan B. Anderson, and Joji Locatelli, all in the same retreat. So I think it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to that. You're going to hear me talk a lot more about my shawl design. I knew I had a lot of other things to talk about in this podcast, so I haven't made too much more progress. I've been pretty much still finishing up that center panel, so hopefully maybe by the next podcast I'll have more to say about that. I'm hoping. But again, right now my Rhinebeck sweater has kind of taken over. It's taken over, people. It's really all I want to work on, let's face it. So I also think, too, it would be lovely to finish my ADK shawl design in time for the fall, because I would love, love, love to be able to photograph finished object pictures up in the Adirondacks in the fall. I think that would be, I can't even think of anything more perfect. So that's a good motivator for me to have that finished. And speaking of fall, let's just say it. I haven't heard anybody else say it yet. I'm sure they have. Maybe I just haven't. I'm totally behind on podcasts. But can we bring on the pumpkin, people? I am ready. I know it's just barely August starting, but I'm already excited about the pumpkin. Pumpkin all over the place. Like pumpkin bombing everything. I'm not even kidding about that. So that will be exciting. But because I don't want to rush summer being over, I am going to squeeze in one last fun summer thing. It's actually kind of like right at the beginning of the school year, but I am going to be going down to South Carolina to visit my mom and dad right around September 6th, which is right around the first day of school for my school district. So I usually in the past have tried to sneak down there that first week, toward the end of that first week of school. The teachers are always really busy with their students and their classrooms and getting things set up. So as a supervisor, it's actually not a terrible time to go away for a long weekend because I typically don't want to bother people anyway. So it'll be fun to go ahead down there and spend some time with mom and dad. Not that I want to end on this note, but the last time that I was down there was actually 2 Junes ago when Jamie had his heart attack. So I think that, I feel a little bit guilty for the fact that as much as I'm excited to go down there, I hate the fact that I'm always going to, maybe I won't forever, but at least for now, I do associate that last visit with something that was a pretty difficult time for us here. So, but I can't let that bother me forever. I can't let that stop me forever. Jamie's doing great, and I'm looking forward to spending time with my parents. So I think, you guys, that is probably about it. I'm going to spend some time doing a little bit of editing. It'd be awesome if I could just get this done tonight, and maybe the YouTube gods will let this upload overnight, and we'll see what happens. But the other thing I wanted to promise you is that I think the next time that I podcast will probably be Labor Day weekend, I think, and we should be up at the cabin. So hopefully, I'm also going to talk to Jamie, you guys, because that's one thing I've gotten some comments from people about. He just came up to refill my drink, and he didn't even say hello to you guys. So I think he owes everybody a little OMJ segment. So when we're up there for Labor Day, we're just by ourselves. So we should have plenty of time. I'm going to get him starting to think now about what it is he wants to chat with you guys about. So we can give you guys a little bit of OMJ. And obviously the dogs will probably be a lot more present up there than they are here. They don't tend to come up to this room really all that often. So I'm sorry about that you didn't get to say hello to the pups. So with that, you guys, I'm going to say cheers. Clearly, I have now a refill. I'm ready to head downstairs. I think we're actually having lobster for dinner, so I'm pretty psyched about that. So I am going to say goodbye, but before I do, I'm going to remind you that no matter what's going on over the next week or over the next coming weeks, I hope that everybody will take the time out to pause for those stitches. I will talk to you soon, you guys. Much love. Mwah.